Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto was raised by the Joker. Such an idea is so wrong, and yet so right. Not to be taken too seriously. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 11, of Heroes and Perverts. There was a certain white-haired ninja who had heard a great deal about his student's son. Something about psychopaths or some other such. Jiraiya had taken it upon himself to find out if the seal had weakened. He was impressed by the various traps around the Uzumaki estate. Step on the grass and the little statues try to kill you. Then there was the ridiculous number of tiger traps, net launchers, senbon, and kunai launchers, and snares all over the lawn. In fact, the only safe place seemed to be the path leading up to the front door. Jiraiya learned the hard way to not step on the pink stone. Especially since the shock caused him to fall onto the grass, incurring the wrath of several of the ugly little statues with pointy hats. The Gamasenin knew it was going to be a Luong day. In another universe, a group of heroes prepared for a journey to bring a criminal to justice. They had finally managed to calculate where their clownish perpetrators ended up. Superman, using what he knew of Kryptonian technology and enlisting the aid of a few of the most technologically adept superheroes, as well as the advice of Dr. Fate and the Atom, had rebuilt the interdimensional gate. Unfortunately, they could only carry 6 people through it at any time. 4 would have to go in and retrieve the Joker and Harley Quinn. Batman was an obvious choice, and Nightwing, Dick Grayson, accepted Bruce's invitation to come along. They both knew the Joker better than anyone else. The Green Lantern, John Stewart, joined them to add the power of his ring to capturing the clown duo. Finally, Jayon Jayons, the Martian Manhunter, volunteered for the dual purpose of recon and to activate the return beacon upon completion of their mission. When the gate opened, the shimmering, watery surface displayed what appeared to be a parody of Mt. Rushmore. Jayon, John, Dick, and Bruce stepped through the portal into a brand new world. Well, new to them, at the very least. Jiraiya was frustrated, but also afraid. The woman's glare was very frightening when she had caught him peeking on her dressing into a skin-tight, red and black bodysuit. She was dragging him by the foot down into the basement after having hit him pretty hard on the head with a humongous hammer. Or was it a mallet? Didn't matter anyway, she had slapped a chakra suppressant seal, interesting that she had one, onto his chin and tied him up with ninja wire. She was muttering something in a language he hadn't heard much of before. It did remind him of what Guy and Lee sometimes shouted to the heavens, but from the tone it promised a great deal of torment followed by a slow and painful death. No, not pleasant mutterings at all. "Joker," she said, once they completed their trek into the basement. "Honey. Look what I found in our house." While the man, who looked like he was wearing some sort of face paint that, from what Jiraiya could tell, was actually his natural complexion, turned around, the Toad Hermit took a glance around the room. The room was fairly large with various torture implements and various lab equipment filling the space. It looked sort of like Orochimaru's secret labs, but the Snakeman's labs looked like children's chemistry sets in comparison to this place. To one side there was a large walk-in freezer with the door sitting wide open. Sounds of physical exertion and a kunai impacting frozen flesh were coming out of the freezer. Peculiar. "So," the man identified as Joker drawled out in a bored tone. "What is this that the cat dragged in?" "A peeping Tom, actually," said the woman. Joker's supposed perma-smile disappeared and was replaced by a mask of rage. His killing intent boiled to the surface in an instant. But then his frown disappeared to be replaced by the creepiest smile Jiraiya had ever seen. It would cause any demon to go green with envy. But with the grin came the most intense spike of killer intent Jiraiya had felt since the Kyuubi had been sealed. Joker pulled a spoon out of a drawer and scooped Jiraiya's eyes out and replaced them with gumballs. He attached some sort of chakra strings to them and to Jiraiya's ears, somehow allowing him to see. Then, smiling gleefully, the clown began to flay the skin off of the screaming old man, layer by agonizing layer until only a rice paper thin layer remained. After that, he attached an explosive tag to the pervert's genitals and detonated it. Next, the clown grabbed a beaker of some green fluid and began to apply it drop by agonizing drop to what was left of the pervert's skin. Finally, Joker grabbed an anvil and dropped it on Jiraiya's chest. The whole time, the woman simply ate a bucket of popcorn, lightly buttered, no salt. The old perverted hermit blinked. That was one of the most intense hallucinations he had ever experienced due to killer intent. "I think I have something special planned for him," said the clown, his eyes narrowing while his grin grew wider yet. "Hey!" called a voice from the freezer. "Don't start the party without me." Jiraiya was stunned out of his fearful shivers when he caught sight of the blonde boy with blue eyes who came walking out of the freezer, cheerful, if creepy, smile splitting his face. Naturally, Jiraiya blurted out the first thing that came to mind. "Minato." With that one word, Joker's and Harley's killer intents stopped dead. Their faces were both studies on confusion and curiosity. Of course, the boy's face of utter and complete confusion was priceless. Jiraiya would have laughed had he not been so confused himself. They knew they were being watched. The denizens of this universe seemed to be quite paranoid if they were watching the four of them as soon as they arrived. Bruce recognized from the writing on various signs for shops that they were in a place that probably spoke Japanese. Jaeon picked up on this and sent the information to John and Dick. Bruce realized that they needed to ditch their tails and told Jaeon what the plan was telepathically. Both squads of Umbu were confused when the four newcomers vanished from sight. No chakra signatures had gone off, so the 8 Umbu simply brought their hands up and whispered Kai. Nothing happened for several minutes. One of the squads left 2 of its members behind to watch the spot where the intruders disappeared. The other 6 Umbu split up to look for the 4 weirdos. Jiraiya had been untied and brought to the parlor of the building, back on the first floor. Harley had served tea which the old pervert checked for poison. There was none in it. But Joker pulled out a bottle of arsenic from his jacket and poured a little into his cup. And then into Harley's cup. And Naruto's. Wadash. Joker looked at the white-haired man quizzically before understanding dawned on him. "Oh, right. You don't know. The 3 of us have a Kekai Genkai that makes our chakra both poisonous and acidic. We can ingest any poison or acid and it merely adds to our power." "What? But you're not biologically related as far as I know." "We don't need to be," commented Harley. "It can actually be transferred to other people merely by spending a great deal of time with any one of us. Naruto's teammates, minus their Jonin-sensei, are prime examples of this. They are beginning to develop the bloodline." "Oh." Naruto's patience waned. "Why did you call me Minato? Is that my real name?" "No. I called you Minato because you look almost exactly like your biological father, Namikaze Minato." "Well, that's new," commented Naruto. "Wait. Namikaze? You mean the Yondaime?" "The same. So that's why those idiots in the Forest of Death were calling me, the Yellow Flash Reborn. Some genins called you that, eh? Well, the Yellow Flash, your birth father, is famous for killing over 2,000 Iwanins and Kuminins in a single day by slitting their throats." "I like him already," Joker said gleefully. "He used some sort of speed jutsu. Famous for it, actually. He developed the Hiraishin no Jutsu. Flying Thunder God no Jutsu." "How did it work?" asked Harley. Jiraiya could tell that he had the undivided attention of all 3 of them. "I honestly don't know. I simply know what it did. He'd send a bunch of special kunai all over the battlefield. Each one had a series of seals on it. Then he'd use the jutsu and it would seem to teleport him to the locations of each of the kunai. Whether or not he actually teleported, no one knows. The secret of that jutsu died with him. At the same time he sealed the demon fox within me, eh? Yes. You don't resent him for it?" "Nah. He did it for the good of the village. Not that they deserved it." "Well, I suppose that some of them did." "So," began Jiraiya. "What happened 3 days after Naruto was born?" "He disappeared from the room he was being kept in." Joker explained what had happened in his own words. Jiraiya could tell that he was telling the truth about being from another world, but the rest was difficult to tell. Who knew that Joker's face would be the perfect poker face despite it almost constantly changing? "Do you think this bad person would be able to follow you to our world?" "Not likely," but I wouldn't be surprised if he managed to stalk me here. Seems that most of the people here happen to be ninja, commented Bruce once they were safely hidden in a copse of trees near what appeared to be a training ground. We need to be extra careful to avoid detection. I've been scanning these ninja with my powers, said Jaeon. Seems that even the weakest among them have superpowers. I wouldn't be surprised if some of them could spit fire. Hey, warned John. There's a couple of those ninja down there. We need to keep quiet and keep our energy down. The striking of the 10th hour of the morning saw a shock of blonde hair walking next to a mass of white hair on one of the various training grounds of Konoha. So, what would you be able to teach me? Asked Naruto. How about how to summon? We already have signed a powerful summon contract, replied the blonde. My adoptive parents and I. Powerful, eh? Can you summon the boss summon? Not yet, but the second in command is powerful in his own right. I'd like to test him out if you don't mind. I don't mind, and the bird of Hermes loves to fight. Ready. Jiraiya jumped some distance away, impressing the four intruders. Ready. Kuchi Yasei no Jutsu. The bird of Hermes is our name, began Pluto, the left head. His voice startled Jiraiya and the four observers, being that it sounded dead and empty, like lead bricks being dropped on granite slabs. Eating our wings to make us tame, finished Vulcan. Jiraiya wasn't as startled by the right head's loud and guttural voice. It reminded him of the sound a kill makes when it is about to explode. On the other hand, the four observers were stunned. How could a boy not only be capable of summoning such a monstrosity but also be willing to do so? Nutritious and delicious. They tasted just like chicken, exclaimed the blonde with mirth. The two-headed hyena laughed at this. So, began Vulcan. What does the clown pup want today? Batman caught on to the word clown in that question by the simple fact that he knew Japanese. I want you guys to fight this guy's boss summon. Boss summon? Mused Pluto. We'll do it, but be sure to summon Cerberus the next time you want to go up against a summon or other beast of such high status. She'll forgive you this time, but her temper is even more legendary than Vulcan's. I heard that. Naturally. It sort of helps that your head is attached to the same body as mine. Guys. Shut up. Let's just wait for Jiraiya to summon his boss summon. Actually, Naruto, I have a few questions before I do. Shoot. The legendary hyena and jackal contract, that was hidden in Iwa, wasn't it? Yeah. Do you realize that since you were from Konoha and had blonde hair that you probably could have been killed? On 8 different occasions on the trip. Why? Jiraiya blinked. Never mind. Kuchi Yasei no Jutsu. The 4 members of the Justice League were surprised at the sheer size of the toad summoned. Jiraiya. How dare you summon me? Sorry Gamabunta. But this upstart summon wants to fight you. I see, replied the toad. Wait. Upstart. I ought to burn you to a crisp, little man. I agree. We are quite well established as the second in command of the hyena half of the contract. We should be more than enough to beat the daylights out of this mere toad, despite the fact that he is larger than we. I don't like your condescending tone. I'm going to have a hyena skin rug to put in my parlor when this is over. Gamabunta drew his sword only to have to leap out of the way as a fireball scorched the earth where he had only previously been standing. Honhoko. Bone lance. A lance with a very large blade made entirely out of bone came shooting out of Pluto's throat. Vulcan caught it with his mouth and swung it upwards to block Gamabunta's katana. While the giant toad leapt back for more fighting room, Pluto opened his mouth again and tendrils of a black substance darker than eternity reached out and grabbed the lance, allowing Vulcan to release his grip on the shaft. Vulcan then opened his mouth wide. Kaikamuka no Jutsu. Mysterious Fire Whip no Jutsu. An orange and red stream of flame snaked its way out of Vulcan's mouth and nearly struck Gamabunta had the toad not leapt out of the way. Sutin, Tepudama. Water release, gunshot. Gamabunta fired a blast of compressed water at the bird of Hermes, but the two-headed hyena leapt out of the way. Vulcan retracted the whip made of fire to avoid letting it be put out, much like slurping a soba noodle. Then the hyena and the toad leapt at each other, Gamabunta bringing the katana forward to attack and Pluto bringing the bone lance to bear. With the resounding sounds of metal and bone colliding for a few seconds came the inevitable conclusion made by the various watchers: the toad and hyena were evenly matched. Except Naruto knew better. Gamabunta was pissed. He was the boss and this simple second-in-command was going toe-to-toe with him. But then Vulcan opened his mouth again, allowing the whip to escape. Gamabunta was unable to get out of the way and the fire seared a phrase on his belly: 5 Ryu. 5 Ryu. Me love you long time. The toad boss looked down to assess the damage. Gamabunta was speechless. Sure, he'd be able to get rid of the phrase if he allowed one of the other toads to heal his burns, but the sheer audacity of the opponent to write graffiti on his stomach appalled him. If he hadn't been so distracted, he probably would have been able to get out of the way of Pluto's next strike, but as it was he was only able to move just enough to make it so that the lance hand merely cut to the bone on his leg rather than stab him in a certain sensitive area. Realizing that his mobility had just been nullified, he unsummoned himself, disappearing in a cloud of smoke. Vulcan swallowed his whip while Pluto swallowed the inky black tendrils and the Honhoko. That was so fun I've forgotten the insult the little man made about us, said Vulcan. Worth the effort, I'd say. Too bad the toad didn't put up as much of a fight as that Zabuza character did. You're telling me, Vulcan said, revealing the scar left from the previous fight by lifting his head. It still looked rather nasty and it showed how extensive the damage to his neck had been. Pluto turned his head to Naruto. Do you need anything else? Nope. And that was pretty fun to watch. Especially the 5 Ryu thing. Vulcan chuckled. We thought you'd like that. Well, until we meet again. With that, the two-headed hyena disappeared. The 4 members of the Justice League were dumbfounded. Monsters able to do those sorts of things, allowing themselves to be subject to an old man and a little boy? That was just plain wrong. So, Ero Sennin, do you now understand how powerful my own summons are? Jaeon was confused. So the old man's name is Ero Sennin Jiraiya? The customs on this planet are really weird. Wow, was the old man's response. Obviously his brain was still trying to reboot. Hey. What can you teach me? If you don't teach me, I'll bring you back to my parents' home so that they can devise a fitting punishment for peeking on my mom. Or did you forget that part of the bargain? Jolted to reality, Jiraiya began to panic. Then he said the first jutsu that came to mind, Rasengan. I'll teach you the Rasengan. Spiraling sphere. Naruto grinned. Do tell. What's it do? After vacating the area where the blonde and the old man were talking about training, the 4 members of the Justice League stopped to consider a few things. You know, commented Dick. If Joker had somehow learned how to do the things the people can do here, capturing him would be near impossible. And let us not forget that he's been here for the past 6 years. 6 years, 7 months, and 13 days, Bruce corrected. Also, I think that blonde kid might have some connection to the Joker. The two-headed hyena mentioned something about a clown before the fight. And the fact that it was a hyena seems to fit somewhat. I'd feel better if we found out who the local authorities are, said John. And asked them to help us find the Joker and Harley Quinn. The ninja are the local authorities, stated Jaeon. But I think I've located our quarry. Well, one of them, at the very least. Which one? Asked Bruce. Harley had sent him out to do the grocery shopping. He didn't like to go grocery shopping, but at least he got a hefty discount simply for being the infamous Mr. J. He did love that he made all the shopkeepers nervous, except for Ichiraku Teuchi, but that man still gave his family a huge discount for being his favorite customers. He brought Bonnie and Clyde along with him. He was just heading back from the shopping district when 4 rather familiar costumes appeared on all sides. A quick glance allowed him to see that the hyenas were under a dome made by the Green Lantern. Joker, we have come to arrest you and take you back to Arkham, Batman said. No can do, stated Joker. He pointed at his forehead protector with his thumb. I'm a citizen of Konoha now, and a ninja to boot. Try to capture me and you'll have the entire ninja population jumping down your throats. Observe, Umbu. I could use some help here. An Umbu squad appeared in a swirl of leaves and wind, flanking Joker protectively. Batman and Nightwing had pulled out batarangs and other weaponry out of their utility belts. Seeing this, two of the Umbu prepared kunai and shuriken. Quickly figuring that the mission was going to pieces, Jaeon tried to reason with the ninja after extracting information about the Japanese language and culture from Batman's head. "Please," began the Martian. "We don't wish to fight you. The Joker is simply a criminal from our home world. We have come to arrest him yet again." One of the Umbu responded by going through a few hand seals. Joker chuckled a bit. "Don't you get it, you green freak? I'm a ninja. One of their better ones too. And my friends here would never extradite me. Besides, the four of you are the bad guys for trying to capture a fellow ninja and learn his secrets that could be vital to Konoha's defense." I love the irony. The Umbu, thankful for Joker's distraction, finished his jutsu. Raiden, Kyuden. Lightning release, ball lightning. The Umbu placed his hands in front of him as if holding a ball. With a sudden flash and an explosion of sound, a literal ball made from orange and blue lightning appeared in his hands, pulsing erratically. "IRU. Fire or shoot or attack." The Kyuden suddenly shot out of the Umbu's hands straight towards the Martian. He dodged it by soaring upwards, but then the Umbu brought his hands up and the ball of electricity abruptly stopped and then sped towards Jaeon's location. The Green Lantern, upon seeing this, released the hyenas in favor of creating a shield to protect his alien friend. The Kyuden exploded against the barrier. It was powerful. Before John could react, a number of roots and branches began to encase his body, restricting his movement. "Oh? I didn't know you were here, Yamato. My squad's been assigned to constantly tail you in case you ever snap." "Ah. That'd be why then. I give the old man points for being paranoid." Meanwhile, Batman and Nightwing found themselves hard-pressed to keep up with the two Umbu whom they fought. The younger of the two heroes had his 6-foot quarterstaff out and was carefully eyeing the Umbu who had a scythe with a chain attached. Batman, on the other hand, was facing the other Umbu, who seemed to prefer taijutsu to using weaponry. Jaeon quickly sped down to where the Green Lantern was trapped and phased through the wood. When he touched John, he helped him phase through his bonds as well. Seeing this, Joker activated one of his family jutsu. His hands flashed through the horse and monkey seals. Caustic Fist, no jutsu. His hands and feet became covered with a green caustic fluid, and he leapt at the Martian. Surprised at the madman's speed, Jaeon didn't have time to dodge the attack, and despite the fact that he was phased out, he was seriously injured by Joker's caustic boot to the head. The pain was so intense that the Martian passed out due to his extra-sensitive nerves in his epidermis. John tried to capture Joker in the energy from his power ring, but Bonnie and Clyde tackled him from behind, breaking his concentration. Soon, the Green Lantern found himself encased in wood yet again. The Umbu who had initially attacked Jaeon applied binding seals to the Martian's skin. Joker then deactivated the Caustic Fist, and leapt into the fight between Nightwing and the Scythe and Chain Umbu. Completely blindsiding the former Robin, the clown hit him with a large C-base in the kidney, causing an extreme amount of pain which caused him to go down. Dropping the fish, Joker brought his hands up, forming the monkey seal. He began to laugh. When Batman heard the Joker's laugh, his opponent sprouted 6 additional arms, all of them tentacles. He began to have to dodge the various attacks from all of the arms. Outside the genjutsu, John and a barely conscious Nightwing were treated to Batman performing a jerky dance and singing. Dale a tu cuerpo. Alegria Macarena. Que tu cuerpo es podarl. Alegria y cosa buena. Dale a tu cuerpo. Alegria Macarena. Macarena. The Umbu who was fighting him stepped back, and glanced at Joker. Upon sensing that Joker was producing a genjutsu, she relaxed and watched the amusing dance that the caped invader was performing. Dale a tu cuerpo. Alegria Macarena. Que tu cuerpo es podarl. Alegria y cosa buena. Dale a tu cuerpo. Alegria Macarena. Macarena. So wait, said the blonde Jinchuriki. You mean all I have to do is pop the balloon using just my chakra? Yes, and that particular balloon has been chemically treated to prevent your chakra from simply eating through the balloon. Makes sense. While I work on this, would you mind helping me with something? Depends on what it is. Well, there's this girl on my team. Upon seeing the lecherous grin on Jiraiya's face, Naruto quickly amended his statement. Whom I have been dating -- curses. That grin just keeps getting wider. Try intimidation. Usually worked for me. And she got hurt during the preliminaries. Do you know of any herbs that can accelerate the healing process? The medic nin said that she'd be out of the hospital in a month, but I'd rather she get out sooner. Though it isn't my specialty, I do have some medical knowledge. I'll see what I can whip up on one condition. Which is? If you allow me to see who she is. Certainly, agreed the blonde. But if you do anything ungentlemanly around her, I'll do what my parents were planning on doing, and then some. This last bit he said while grinning wildly. Perhaps that was why it was so unsettling for Jiraiya to see and hear. See? What did I tell ya? He looks so funny when he's soiling his shorts. Chapter 12, Losing Face Version 2. Good morning, sunshine, said a familiar female voice. Obviously, she was entirely too cheerful. Batman opened his eyes to find that he was tied to a chair, wearing nothing but his boxers, cape, and mask. When he looked up, he saw Harley Quinn. Me oh my, Harley said, continuing. We ought to make a bat stir-fry. But seriously, Joker's in charge of your interrogation. That doesn't mean that I don't get to talk to you like an irrational being. Or was that rational being? I can never remember which. Batman made no response. He looked around the room without moving his head. One door, two chairs, one of which was occupied by himself, the other by Harley, a metal table, a single light bulb overhead, an off-television set hanging in a corner, and at least 2 security cameras, one in each of the visible corners. Batman guessed, correctly, that there were 2 more cameras in the corners behind him. Harley continued speaking again. Why do you always have to try and break up our happy little family, huh? 12, almost 13, years ago, my honey and I stole a portal from that crazy computer that Soup's people let loose. When we activated it, it spat out a little blonde child. We decided to adopt him. Batman's mind raced. They adopted a child? What? Where did they keep him? Why did they adopt him? Why hadn't he died early on? And then, when he was a little older than 6, we decided to leave, but not without letting you track down the portal room. I suppose you know better than we do what happened after that in your world. But here, we were hired as ninja, and we've been happy ever since. And you tried to take that away. You tried to destroy our family. You're the monster here. Mad enough to track us down across dimensions. I should have fed you to those piranhas when I had the chance. Crying, she gave Batman a standing boot to the head, knocking him over. She then stormed out of the room, slamming the door. Batman blinked, and then the door opened again. Joker walked in, closing the door behind him. The clown had a clipboard and a wistful look upon his face while looking at where Harley had left the room. The man sighed before turning his attention to Batman, righting his chair once he noticed it was on the floor. Rather than breaking out into a full grin or laughing maniacally like Bruce had predicted, Joker simply smirked. Immediately, his blood ran cold. You know, Bats, I have you at my mercy. I've wanted to have you be in this position for a long time so that I could finally kill you. But no. Instead, we're just going to torture you before sending you home. And no, we don't want information. We just want to send a message. Finally, Batman spoke. You're an imposter. It was then that Joker threw his head back and laughed. Ibiki monitored Joker and Batman on the security feeds. He turned his head to another screen to watch as Anko interrogated the dark-skinned man with the energy ring. Joker had been adamant about removing the ring but also not letting anyone else wear it. R&D had scanned it and found it to be high in various energies, none of which were chakra, so it was quite possible that the thing was booby-trapped in case someone other than the ring's owner put it on. Anko slapped the man awake. John felt a sharp pain on the right side of his face where he had no doubt been slapped. Wake up! Anko said sharply. What? Nanny. Anko-san, said Ibiki's voice over the intercom. Mr. J said that they don't speak the same language as us. Oh. Yeah. I forgot. Who was that? What did he say about the Joker? Looks like I'll have to go with the universal language then. What? Anko then pulled out a scalpel from the briefcase sitting on the metal table. I'd tell you how much this is going to hurt, but you wouldn't understand a word I'd say. What are you doing? The snake mistress walked up to John in a sultry manner, and began to inscribe kanji and kana on his right arm using the scalpel. John screamed in agony as Anko wrote the phrase, "For a good time call Anko in Konoha it." Ibiki shook his head. He then checked on Joker and Batman. So far, all that Mr. J had done was talk and laugh. The man in the cape hadn't said much. Ibiki turned to another monitor where the Green Man was being held in stasis via a network of seals. The man was finally conscious and being interrogated by an Umbu who was an expert Katon user, in case he broke free. Joker had said that fire and lightning jutsu would be the only attacks able to hit the man, aside from the Uzumaki clan jutsu. His interrogation was going well. The Green Man was already begging for an end to the pain from the electrical wiring he was hooked up to. Odd that he was able to speak their language. Ibiki directed his attention to another monitor where Harley was interrogating the final prisoner. "Wakey wakey. Eggs and bacy." Dick groaned. His head and back still hurt. He opened his eyes to see an extremely familiar face smiling at him. He was suddenly very alert, and sat up, ramrod straight, in his chair. His eyes were almost panicked, and his muscles creaked under the tension he put them through. "Harley." "That's me," said the insane woman in a cheery tone. "How nice of you to join us among the living, though you'll probably wish we had killed you once we're through." "You're not going to kill me?" "What about the others?" "Nope. They'll live. But their ability to come back and hurt us will be compromised." "What?" "You heard me right, Batsy. It's not about revenge." Bruce was suddenly very worried about what was going to happen to him and his teammates. Joker not trying to kill him was totally out of character, or at least he thought so. It's about sending a message: mess with Konoha, you'll get burned. "Badly," said the clown. After a moment, he continued. "And maybe stabbed in the spine and left in a ditch." "Message?" asked Dick. "Yes. Batsy will have a message of his own to carry, but you'll carry a different one. Before dismantling the portal, the Justice League must allow whatever Gotham criminals a one-way ticket to Konoha that want to, as well as send the 2 ninja that we're sending out back to our fine hidden village." "What?" "Well, sure. I mean, why did most of them turn to crime anyway?" asked the female clown as she began to sharpen a kunai. "They're insane," responded Nightwing, clothed in only his mask and boxers. "No, silly. They were rejected by society at large. Sure, some of them would turn to crime regardless, but for the most part, most of them were wronged or shunned by the people around them, or other criminals took advantage of them. Take Killer Croc, for example. I seriously doubt that he'd have turned to crime if he wasn't rejected based solely on appearance. I think you've overly romanticized your fellow villains." "Perhaps. But if they get uppity after coming here, we can always just kill them and use their bodies for research." "You're twisted? We're ninja. Our honor is only to our hidden village, in this case it's Konoha. If anything threatens Konoha, we eliminate it as quickly and efficiently as possible. And you haven't killed us because killing any of you would bring the Justice League into this world. We want to be left alone. That is the message Batsy will carry." Before Nightwing could respond, the television monitor in one of the upper corners of the room suddenly turned on. On the screen was Batman's cell, via the security feeds. Joker was in there as well. "Hey, honey," called out Joker. "I thought you'd like to see who's under mask number 1. "Certainly. And I'll show you who's under mask number 2. Dick began to sweat as Joker grabbed one of the ears on Batman's mask. With a quick flick of the wrist, the cape and cowl were removed and tossed upon the table. Joker stared for a moment. Harley looked shocked. But then the clown duo simply laughed. "Ha ha ha. Batman is snicker Bruce Wayne. Snort, what's the matter, Batsy? Did you have a really bad day the night Mama and Papa died?" "Ah ha 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 hey. Bruce's face went beet red, and his visage twisted into a mask of rage, but he was as stoic as ever. However, Joker could tell that his psyche was straining. Dick could also tell that Batman was struggling internally, simply from his long association with the man. Obviously, the Bat had compartmentalized his persona into Bruce and Batman, with the latter being the dominant original, which said a lot for the man's mental state. He was almost as bad as Harvey Dent. Now that he was exposed to his worst nemesis, his brain was twisting into knots trying to figure out if he was supposed to be the Dark Knight or the dashing billionaire. Joker got in his face, his own completely serious, probably for the first time in his life. "I'm so sorry, Richie Rich, I just have a hard time believing that the billionaire playboy is the Bat." Bruce opened his mouth for a reply, but Joker shoved a sock into his mouth to gag him. "Shush." Confused, Batman's eyes narrowed. "I have a rhetorical, philosophical question for you. Before we find out who Nightwing is." Joker's tone was no longer like he was on the edge of sanity, taking what Bruce knew about the clown and throwing it into a wood chipper prior to urinating on it. And then dropping napalm on it. The sock was removed. "The one thing which puzzled me, and kept me coming back to Gotham, is quite complex. What has perplexed me the most is what was most obvious. Everyone knows. You wear your shame like a badge, but refuse to wear one like the boys in blue do." Joker then grabbed Batman's mask and held it in front of his face. "Just look at this. You are desperate to be perceived as a monster, draped in black, and yet," Joker's fingers slipped through the hole at the bottom of the mask, and he wiggled them around in the cavity. "You left this little window, a small glimpse of the chiseled good looks of your alter ego, not the jaw of a fiend but of a human being. Why?" Bruce blinked. He didn't have an answer. Because he didn't know why. "I see," Joker sighed, idly tossing the mask back onto the table before continuing to speak. "It would be one thing if you did it simply to mock me, but seriously," his usual almost sane tone had returned, worrying Bruce with how comforting it sounded to him. "Oh well. I have my answer, but you don't yet bear the message, so you are not yet free to return home." Ruffling Bruce's hair, Joker turned and looked at the monitor where he could see Harley. "I have a feeling that it will be disappointing to see who the bird is, but I would like to know." Kind of shocked at how sober her husband had sounded, Harley, like a zombie, robotically slid the mask off of Nightwing's face to reveal Dick Grayson. "The circus orphan?" Talk about anticlimactic. Joker ran his gloved digits through his hair. "You know what, Batsy? I need a drink. I'll leave you to your thoughts for the rest of today." "Joker? Honey? Are you feeling okay?" "No, I can't believe I just did that. Forced myself temporarily sane just to screw with Batman's mind. Get the formaldehyde, I wanna get drunk." She slowly opened her eyes. She still hurt, but she knew that the internal bleeding had stopped. "SHHH," whispered a familiar voice. "Don't worry about a thing. I got someone to help you out, but you won't be able to use your chakra for a while. You should be able to do so once the finals start." "Naruto?" "Yes, Hinata-chan. It's me. I'm sorry that Neji was more powerful than we anticipated, but you'll still be able to prove them all wrong soon." But I failed." "Nonsense. You simply had a bad day. Rest now, and bide your time." Naruto walked away a bit, and Hinata closed her eyes. Before Naruto left the room, however, he did have one final thing to say. "You know, my dad said that it only took one bad day to make him so powerful. I hope you can become more powerful too." As Hinata drifted back to slumber, she dwelled on the idea of embracing chaos and laughter. Of smiles and screams. Of her one bad day. "Why would you ask me to help you with torture?" "Well, the usual methods don't seem to be cracking a couple of them," lied Joker. "I thought maybe you could help us out with some experimental torture." "Breaking bones is experimental." No. We've already tried that." "No, we want your unique speeches. Talk about what you usually talk about when you try to get the troops moving. We want to go for, intimidation." "Yosh. I'll do it. I'll strike fear into their most unyouthful hearts by telling them about the flames of youth and the glories of Konoha." "Perfect," said the clown with a wide grin, clasping his hands. Child? John was confused, understatement of the century. Yup, replied Naruto. You are about to be interrogated by a child. How does that make you feel? This world is effed up. Naruto grinned, and John suddenly realized that this was the boy who summoned that freakish hyena, and that this blonde boy was connected to the Joker. I'm in deep SH, aren't I? The boy just grinned wider as he picked up a sheet of paper and a bottle of lemon juice. So, you understand what your mission will be, correct? The Hokage asked two of his who he knew weren't loyal to the route. Hi. That is why we allowed ourselves to be subjected to a genjutsu designed as a rapid language course for this. Ego. English, language. Good. You remember who to look for. Hi, replied the other. A woman called Poison Ivy, a short man with a monocle named Penguin, a disfigured man named Two-Face, a large gray man called Killer Croc, a shapeshifter named Clayface, a scientist called Scarecrow, a genius in a green suit called Riddler, a female thief named Catwoman, and a very short man wearing a top hat called the Mad Hatter. We are to avoid the large man called Bane, the Ice User, Mr. Freeze, and any other freaks as well as the authorities. Very good. Be ready, for you will leave as soon as Uzumaki Joker says go. Dismissed. It took nearly 2 more days before Batman was almost ready to crack. Joker could have caused him to crack much sooner, but would give him a couple hours of rest every once in a while, just to make it worse for the rich boy. The medicnins had to keep on bringing the prisoners back from the brink of death, but they made sure that the wounds would scar when they healed them. Today's the big day, Bats. You finally get to go home, but not before I give you a choice. When I send you back, you will have to choose which of your egos will die. Whether the rich ladies' man known as Bruce Wayne suddenly disappears without a trace or the dark and mysterious knight known as Batman will cease to hunt down criminals. This will be a difficult choice for you. If you chose to kill Bruce Wayne, Batman will become suspect, especially since he will be cut off from his money. If Bruce Wayne lives on as a broken victim of the Joker, Batman will have to vanish. Bruce's voice was raspy, especially because he screamed himself hoarse, but it still carried a hint of defiance. What makes you think? Cough, I'll choose either. This, said the Joker, as he pulled a kunai out of his kunai pouch. I just wanted to see you smile, always have. But you never did. So, I'll just have to put a smile on your face. With one hand, the clown grabbed the bat's head and held it in place. The other hand slowly and carefully placed the kunai inside Bruce's mouth. Let's put a smile on that face. Formaldehyde again. Yeah, with cyanide whiskey mixed in. He took several swallows before continuing. I've done worse things to enemy spies, but I actually liked doing it. This time, no humor in it. No fun. Probably the reason why you never really took care of him like that before. How do you figure? You loved to obsess over him, but in your mind he would always be there, and always be so difficult to get rid of, that you counted on it as the one constant in your chaotic life. Now that you've broken him and killed half of him, and so easily I might add, you no longer have that to look forward to. Is that psychobabble bullshit you're feeding me, or do you actually believe in it? Psychiatrists are 90% bullshit, you know. I love you, Harley. With that, he took another swig of his deadly drink. Yeah, so you'll have to let them know that we have the kryptonite that Batman normally carries in his belt here in Konoha. One of the, what was it called? Yeah, one of the was talking to him. He felt terrible, especially when they brought that blonde child they had seen earlier to help with the torture sessions. These were terrible people, but they were powerful. John could understand why they reacted so violently, but he hoped he could make the others see that they were simply defending their colleague and wished to send a message to the rest of the Justice League. John was going to destroy the portal as soon as possible, but not before the two returned to Konoha with whatever criminals they had recruited from Gotham. They had returned his costume to him, and, after he was dressed, bound his arms again. Then, they took a small yellow bag, put his power ring into it, and used a safety pin to attach it to his suit. Jaeon looked horrible. They said that the symbols had been tattooed onto him, permanently stripping him of most of his powers. Bruce, he had that horrible smile carved on his mouth. Dick had a smiley face tattooed on his forehead, as well as a phrase in English on his back that said, "Eat Ichiraku ramen, feel great." Still, he seemed to have been the only one not really broken by the torture. What that crazy snake lady did to him though, still made him shudder. She had brought in that fluorescent ink and tattooed his organ to look like a snake. And then two of the Umbu, including the one who was talking to him, were going to return with them to the watchtower. The only truly unsettling thing was that he could hear Harley in another room, singing the song, "Don't worry, be happy." That song seemed to really stress out Bruce. The man's almost vacant eyes were actually swelling with tears. "Hey, Hirosenin." Jiraiya put his spyglass down, annoyed that the progeny of his student was interrupting his research but smart enough to not complain about it, and turned to the boy, who had a blue balloon. Wait, blue? Had he managed to pop the red one? Or did he figure out how to change the color of it? Either way, the kid was a genius. "Yeah, Gaki. Gaki equals brat. I figured out how to pop it." He held up the balloon. "At first, I tried to just spin it, but it went like this dash." The balloon flattened out before Naruto released it. "And with one hand I couldn't get it to go more than 3 or 4 directions dash." Again, he demonstrated, the water inside sloshing around but not really straining the balloon. "But then I figured, why not use both hands to start it?" And he brought his other hand to the side of the balloon, causing the water inside to go wild, popping it within a fraction of a second. Jiraiya was open-mouthed. Only 8 days since learning what the first stage was and he already found his own way to solve it. The old ninja then clamped his mouth shut into a grin. "Very good, Gaki. Here." Jiraiya handed him a box of rubber balls. "Stage 2 is much more difficult. Instead of water, it is air, which is harder to control, and the object is to pour enough power into it to pop the ball, which is much thicker than any balloon. The objective is to pop the ball within a second of starting. Took your old man a year to do it, but it also took him a year and a half to figure out the first stage and do it." "Huh," replied Naruto. "How long did it take him to do stage 3? 6 months. Took him 3 years in total to create the Rasengan, and even now, it still isn't finished. So I should be able to get this done in 5 or 6 days and master the 3rd stage by the finals. At the rate you're going, I wouldn't be surprised." 8 days after sending the 4 intruders and 2 cat-masked Umbu to that other universe, another 15 days before the start of the exams, for those who are counting, the 2 Umbu exited a glowing portal at the rendezvous point in Training Ground 80, right on schedule. Joker, Harley, the Sandaime, and 4 full squads of Umbu, including Yamato's squad, were there to greet them. "Password?" asked Harley. "Shave and a haircut," replied the 2 cat-masked Umbu in unison. "2 bits," sang the Joker. One of the 2 cat-masked Umbu then stuck his arm back through the portal, presumably to give the people on the other side a thumbs up. A man wearing all green with a top hat and cane and a question mark motif on his suit jacket exited the portal, dragging a suitcase, followed by a lanky man wearing a burlap mask dragging another suitcase and a trolley with several tanks of some gas or other behind him. Attached to the other end of the trolley, pushing it along, was a large gray man with sharp teeth and scaly skin, carrying 2 trunks with his other hand. Following him was a large, flesh-colored monster that looked ready to melt, carrying 4 trunks on his own. Either he had a lot of stuff, or he was helping someone else. After he came through the portal, a red-haired bombshell of a woman armed with a small crossbow exited. Following her was a large, plant thing that walked with its exposed roots, and in its vines it carried a number of flower pots and a large crate filled with seed boxes and another with bags of fertilizer. Yamato cocked his head to one side at the woman and her plant pet thingy. After they all were through the portal, it closed and they all set their things down, except the plant. "Umbu, report," commanded the Sandaime. "Mostly successful, Hokage-sama," began one of the Umbu. "Only 5 recruits from Gotham, but continued the other. "The Justice League will never bother us again. 4 of the recruits already knew our language and, Killer Croc, let us put him under the genjutsu to learn it already." The man in green stepped forward. "The Hokage, I presume." At the old man's nod, The younger man bowed. Greetings. I am known as the Riddler, or Edward Nigma, but I suppose I'll take the name Gimonfu. Question mark. Well, Gimonfu, assuming you pass our psych evaluation, standards are pretty lax, we can start your training if you wish to become a ninja. Gimonfu bowed graciously at this. The Hokage turned to the man in the burlap mask. And you would be the Scarecrow, correct? Precisely, replied the lanky man as he bowed. I was also known as Dr. Jonathan Crane, and I studied the effects of fear on the human psyche. I would like the name Ozari, as I hear that the name Kakashi is already taken. Fear. A bit pretentious for a name, but it would work. Like Gimonfu, you'll have to pass the evaluation. You'll probably end up helping in our torture and interrogation department. There will be plenty of test subjects for your fear experiments, in any case. Ozari grinned at this. The Hokage turned to the large gray man. And you would be? In response the man bowed. Let me introduce myself. I was known as Killer Croc in the Otha world. Original name was Waylon Jones, but I suppose you could just call me Croc. I would like to become a ninja, however. Assuming you pass the test, that would be permissible. Also, it is possible that your condition could be passed on to your children, making it a Kekai Genkai. If it is, and even if it isn't, you will be quite respected in our society and valued as a soldier. Bowing again, Croc thanked the Hokage. The old man then turned to the flesh-colored monster. The shapeshifter, Clayface, I presume. Exactly, though I'll be going by Domin around here, replied the thing, bowing as he did so. Domin equals Clay Mask. I would like to learn more about this chakra energy, because from what I can tell, it's how I manage to move about. And if I can use it to repel water. In any case, assuming I pass your psych evaluation, I can help you figure out if you have any moles in your ranks, as I used to be an actor named Matthew Hagen. Last, but not least, the Hokage turned towards the woman, who was looking at the various vegetation and the expanses of forest around her before realizing that she was next for introductions. She bowed to the Hokage, actually revealing an ample amount of her cleavage, causing the old man to inwardly smirk. Yamato discreetly hid his small nosebleed. I am Pamela Isley, otherwise known as Poison Ivy, though I will take the name of Quinn Ivy, as Quinn was Harley's maiden name and she's like a sister to me. I just love the forests around here. And I feel that the plants around here are content. Joker started nudging Yamato with his elbow. Later, in the Hokage's office. So, only 5. Well, Hokage-sama, some did not wish to leave dash. Such as, Two-Face, as the man does not trust Joker-san. Penguin, actually had quite the information and financial network going dash. That we agreed with him that leaving it to start again from scratch would just be stupid. Let's see. Mad Hatter? His technology was very delicate, or so he claimed dash. And it probably wouldn't survive the rigors of a ninja lifestyle dash. So he declined on the basis that he felt he'd be quite useless to us. Joker-san advised us that Catwoman probably knew that Batman's alter ego was Bruce Wayne dash. Because he knew that Selina Kyle dash. Catwoman's real name dash. Dated Bruce Wayne for a bit dash. So we did the responsible thing and told her what we did to the man. She wasn't happy and refused to come with us dash. We assume that she probably still loves the man and either wanted to stay to comfort him dash. Or didn't want to see Joker-san at all after what he did to him dash. Or both. All others we avoided dash. Like a plague. The Hokage took a long drag from his pipe as he mulled that over in his head. Yeah, I'd be upset if I were her. You did the right thing. What happened with the Justice League? Well, the one in the red cape was furious dash. That we tortured his buddies, but with the urging of the dark-skinned man we tortured dash. As well as the guy in the gold mask, a woman in a red bodice and blue panties, and this woman with bird wings, among others dash. He relented and let us do what we went to do. Their reluctance crumbled once they learned that practically all of us here had superpowers dash. What with the sheer numbers involved in all. Then, we promised to invade their world dash. If they did not let us recruit some of Gotham as criminals to work for us dash. Prior to returning us to our own world. Another puff on the pipe. And they fell for the bluff. After proving that we can break the dimensional boundaries on our own dash. By summoning one of our nincats dash. Which really freaked out the man with the gold mask dash. Yeah. They fell for it. The Hokage smiled. Thank you for completing your mission. You will both receive a bonus in your next paycheck. Thank you, Hokage-sama. They replied in unison. You are to return to your surveillance of root members. Dismissed. Hi, Hokage-sama. They chimmered at the same time prior to disappearing in twin smoke clouds. The Hokage leaned back, continuing to smoke his pipe. Hiruzen liked the Nico brothers, very diplomatic when the situation called for it, and very vicious when necessary. They also had a good sense of humor and each seemed to know what the other was thinking, like twins typically are fabled to have. Considering that they were identical twins from a non-clan family who had happened upon a minor summoning contract, the house cat contract, the fact that they tested into Umbu from the rank of Genin. The only other to do so was Uchiha Itachi, though they were much older when they did so. Still, they were excellent Umbu, and decidedly loyal to the Hokage, proven by consistently giving accurate intelligence on Danzu, head of Umbu Ne, otherwise known as Root. Predictably, Croc, Gimonfu, and Ozuri had immense difficulty with accessing their chakra. Still, Gimonfu made an excellent amount of progress once he viewed the ability to use chakra as a challenging puzzle at Joker's suggestion. He was still a far cry from actually using it, but he had begun to feel it within himself. Croc didn't care much for chakra, so he trained with Might Guy every morning instead, figuring he could just condition his body further to be much more useful to Konoha. Ozuri hadn't yet gotten the hang of it, but Joker and Ibiki reported even higher success rates in interrogation with the presence and techniques Ozuri used when assisting in the torture of prisoners. What was most likely was that Ozuri would never be a combat ninja, but he was still useful to Konoha. What Domin had predicted about himself was completely true. He did use chakra simply to move around and change shape, making it really easy for him to learn how ninja controlled it themselves. He quickly learned as much about water-repelling jutsu and chakra exercises as he could. With Harley's help, Ivy soon realized that her control over her plants was really a form of chakra technique, much like Harley's hammer space had been. Considering her abilities with Flora, she was considered a Mokuton user. Yamato, the only other Mokuton user, started hanging out with Ivy when his squad, which still followed Joker around, was off duty. Chapter 13, finally. Hokage-sama, bowed the tiger-masked Umbu. Tiger-san. Report. Actually, I'm not Tiger Face, replied the Umbu with a chuckle, before he grew in size and changed color. Wow, replied the Hokage. You had me going for a moment there, Domin-san. What do you have to report? I found a really big security hole this morning, only an hour ago, actually, and I'd like to bring it to your attention. Certainly. What is it? Domin simply walked forward and set his hand on the stack of paperwork that had accumulated on the Hokage's desk. This. The Sandaime cocked his head, a little confused. The report about the death of one of the Chunin examines? Namely Kinyuta Doso. Think more broadly. Paperwork, Hokage-sama. Hiruzen did a quick genjutsu canceller, just to be sure. He was feeling a bit lightheaded too. Excuse me, you said paperwork, right? Domin chuckled. Yes, Hokage-sama, I did. You see, much of this is just legal filler, that if you took enough time to read through, you'd no doubt notice that some of these are authorizations for you to relinquish what powers you have and give them to the council, particularly the civilian parts of it. Do you have proof of this? Just my experiences with human nature. Remember how I said I was an actor? Basically a really expensive stage performer. Yes. Well, I had an agent for a time. I fired him because he kept trying to slip little things that would give him more money than he was due into the contracts I was signing. Eventually, he was making more money than I was, so I fired him. I have learned to go through the fine print. But the amount of paperwork I have. Correct. So much of it is legal filler that is boring, that you'll miss the little sneaky tricks they put in there. There is nowhere near enough time to go through it all, at least, not at the moment. Well, I do thank you, Domin-san. Didn't the Uzumaki kid say that his shadow clones give him the knowledge that he learns with them to his real self when they dispel? Well, I'm not sure how that is related. Domin grinned widely, which was almost as disconcerting as when Joker grinned. I'm such an idiot, deadpanned the Hokage. If you say so, sir. I do suggest getting rid of this paperwork problem after the finals. The old man puffed on his pipe. I have been too lenient on the council. Thanks again, Domin. Domin shifted back into being the tiger-masked Umbu. By your leave, Hokage-sama. The gray monster rolled with the boot to the head that he received from Might Guy, tucking his legs in and spreading his arms. Though Croc's taijutsu form was terrible, he did primarily fight by brawling method, meaning that he was rather chaotic and unpredictable. Also, he let his thick hide absorb most of the impact when he got hit. Completing the roll, he managed to return to a standing position and caught Guy's follow-up roundhouse kick with his left palm. He then ripped Guy from the ground, despite the green-clad man trying to get a grip with his chakra, and swung the taijutsu enthusiast over his head a couple of times before hurling the man into a tree. Guy flipped in midair so that he could safely catch himself with his legs. Just as he was about to leap at Croc with the rebound, he noticed that Croc was charging, surprisingly quickly. He only had just enough time to get out of the way as the larger man smashed into the tree, splintering it and felling it easily. Just to get a point across, Guy threw a kunai at Croc's back, but was surprised when the stab-bitty object bounced off of Croc's thick hide. Hey, Lee. You Uzumaki-san. The miniature guy was confused as to why Naruto would be paying him a visit, of all people. You ever hear of Jiraiya? The Toad Sage of the Sunin. Of course. What are you? After the Chunin exam finals, he and I are going to track down Tsunade, the slug princess of the Sunin. I'm going to make sure she fixes you up, because I can see the potential you have and would hate to see it go to waste. Before Lee could process that information, Naruto had left the room. Jiraiya was actually standing outside the room. So you told him? Why? Connections, Ero Sennin. Sure, the boy is not from a clan or anything, but he's going to rival Kakashi and Guy one day. A ninja who is that strong is my friend. Investing in favors rather early, eh? I'm going to be clan head one day, so I gotta make sure my connections are strong. We're still going to help out your girlfriend today, right? Silly Sennin. Of course we are. Naruto was surprised to see Hinata sitting up this time, drawing in a sketchpad. What jaw drawing there, Hinata-chan? She grinned widely at his approach, and he could see the small traces of madness in her eyes that had not been there the last time he saw her up and about. He returned the grin. Jiraiya realized that Hyuga Hinata was delving into the insanity that was every day for the Uzumaki family, and he found himself not very inclined to report this development to anyone, least of all her father. Hinata flipped her sketchpad to the first page and showed it to Naruto. The crazed blonde looked at it for a minute, before he realized what it was. It was a drawing of her father nailed to a crucifix in the middle of the forest of death, and covered in barbecue sauce. The next picture was a self-caricature, but Hinata was in a dominatrix outfit. Naruto blushed a bit at that. Some of the pictures were of horrible or funny things happening to people that Hinata did not like, others were of her in very sexy positions. The one that really turned Naruto on was one of her naked, and all that covered her naughty bits was a fox laying on her stomach, its forepaws covering her breasts and its tail covering her nether region. The fox, it grinned much in the way Naruto did, and Naruto realized that the fox was supposed to be him. His face was beet red at that point, and when Hinata noticed this, she giggled perversely. Her giggle was answered by Jiraiya's giggle. Naruto turned to see that the old pervert was writing things down on a notepad. He cleared his throat, his embarrassment turning to anger. Jiraiya merely looked up. Don't worry, Naruto. I'm changing the names drastically. Naruto, shaking his head, turned to Hinata to see the veins around her eyes bulging. She had her Byakugan active, and she was licking her lips hungrily at Naruto. It was at that time that Naruto realized he still had a boner. Hinata-chan. Then, Naruto realized something else. Hinata. His voice was stern. You're not supposed to be using your chakra. She went wide-eyed. Slowly, she bowed her head, her bloodline limit deactivating. I'm sorry. Naruto-kun. I forgot. The blonde maniac sighed. Look, I don't want you to hurt yourself like that. You'll be able to use chakra again in 10 days, okay? Okay. She muttered, still melancholic. But after that, you can ogle me all you want. He ended with a grin. She looked up and grinned back, blushing a bit. 14 days left until the finals, Gaki. How quickly can you pop the rubber ball? 10 seconds. Should have it down in another couple of days. So, you going to use the Rasengan against that Hyuga? Nope. Got something special planned for him. It had better not involve a banana peel. Naruto chuckled. Damn it. Come on, Eddie. You can do better than that. Quiet, Joker. You're ruining my concentration. You're going to have to get used to it, Gimonfu, retorted Harley. You're going to have to be able to draw on your chakra at a moment's notice in the heat of battle eventually. The green-clad man grunted as he picked the leaves up again and tried to stick them to his body with his meager chakra supply. Anko and Ivy were going around the forest of death, discussing the various plants in the special Jounin's favorite place. Both ladies were well aware of the Umbu detail following them, but they thought the Umbu were there to make sure Ivy was loyal. Most of the Umbu thought that too, but the fact of the matter was that Yamato simply wanted to watch Ivy, even if it was from afar. Meanwhile, Ozuri and Ibiki were discussing the effects of fear on their customers and how effective scare tactics were in getting people to spill their guts without having to resort to Joker's methods of literally spilling their guts. Ozuri lifted the tea to his lips, having rolled his burlap mask to above his nose so that he could drink it. I have noticed that customer 7 is resisting all traditional methods, and has withdrawn within his own mind so well that Joker-san can't get at him. Ibiki nodded as he ate his crackers. They were sitting outside the cell of prisoner 25, within full view of the woman. Her chakra-draining chains glowed as her eye twitched. She hadn't been fed in 2 days and had received nothing to drink in the past 24 hours. What do you propose? Asked the head of the Umbu Department of Torture and Interrogation, Umbu DTI. Well, I suppose the man may be afraid of mice or spiders or something. I propose we post a D rank to collect 50 live rodents and another to collect 500 live spiders, but with C rank pay attached. If that fails, get me some peanut butter. Excuse me. Arachibutyrophobia. It is the fear of having peanut butter stuck to the roof of your mouth. Ibiki cocked his head. Don't look at me that way. It's more common than you think. Barring that, we can go with a genjutsu based on helminphobia, the fear of being infested with worms. A fairly common phobia that most people don't even know they have. The woman in the cell repositioned her legs. And if that doesn't work? Saucerophobia. Sounds interesting. It's the fear of one's parents-in-law. Ibiki snorted. No. Lachonophobia, the fear of vegetables. You've got to be kidding me. Yeah, but some people do have it. You don't suppose he might have linonophobia? Do I want to know? The fear of string, amusingly enough. Ibiki stared at the burlap-masked co-worker for a full minute before responding in a deadpan. Ozuri, get serious. Well, supposing he doesn't have musophobia, arachnophobia, helminphobia, or arachibutyrophobia, I suppose he might have apiphobia, bees, sphexophobia, wasps, vergitivityphobia, rape, anophelophobia, painful sexual intercourse, proctophobia, rectal disease, teniophobia, tapeworms, the female prisoner twitched almost imperceptibly. Asthenophobia, weakness, hemophobia, blood, necrophobia, corpses, she shifted uncomfortably on her cot. Ophidiophobia, snakes, parasitophobia, parasites, pyrophobia, fire, or hydrophobia, water, Necrophobia sounds like our best bet, actually. The woman swallowed. Shall I ask Joker-san to procure us a corpse or two? Sure. Why not? The kunoichi felt like crying, especially since she realized they were talking about her and not some other prisoner. Joker had to duck the moray eel his son tossed at him. To determine how much Naruto had improved under Jiraiya's tutelage, and with only 7 days to go before the finals, Harley had suggested a spar. The elder clown charged forward to plant his open palm in his son's face, but the boy simply lunged forward, dodging the attack and getting inside his father's guard. He attempted to raise his knee to hit Naruto in the nose, but felt pain in his foot instead. His foot had been nailed to the ground with a kunai. How did Naruto fall so quickly? As he snapped his other leg forward, catching his son in the throat and launching him some distance away, he felt the remnants of wind-oriented chakra in the air. "You little sneak," commented Joker as he pulled the kunai out of his foot. He had to quickly backpedal as his son's shadow clones went for an all-out assault, attacking at different speeds, at different times and angles, while still being in tandem. Joker had to cast the caustic barrier just to get them to stop, and before they could get away, he used the caustic bomb, eliminating most of the shadow clones, but some of them remained. Joker realized that they were Akuna no Kage Bunshins, shadow clones of poison, and had simply absorbed the acid from his attack. The clones then leapt off of the ground, each one of them manipulating the wind as best as they could to move through the air faster than what Joker thought would be possible. Didn't the old pervert say that Naruto was primarily wind-natured, and they had trained mostly in chakra manipulation? The green-haired man simply pulled out a potato peeler and began dispatching the clones, until there was one left. He then attacked that final Naruto with a rubber chicken. Poof! It was gone. So startled was the clown, that he didn't notice Naruto rising up out of the ground behind him. The blonde swiftly kicked his dad in the balls from behind. "Gaha!" squeaked Joker, before falling over. Harley and Naruto began laughing. "What jutsu was that, son?" asked Harley as Joker tried to walk off his injury, grumbling but smirking the whole time. "Huh? Oh, it's the other jutsu I learned from the Forbidden Scroll, Hirabanshou, Baka no Jutsu. Leech all creation, attack prevention no jutsu. Why have you never used it before?" inquired Naruto's mother. "Didn't have enough chakra control to use it reliably, either in or out of combat, until now." "What does it do?" "Well, I can sink into objects, such as trees, the ground, large rocks, or buildings, and travel stealthily through the area. Only the most chakra-sensitive people can detect where I am, though I will try to improve my control further so that my chakra signature is spread throughout an entire area." Harley chuckled. "They'd be able to tell that you're around, but not pinpoint your location, right?" "Yup. So tell me, when is your girlfriend getting out of the hospital?" 3 days left before she does. She'll be completely healed too. Her muscles will have atrophied a bit, mused Joker, as he walked up to his family. Yeah, it'll be a couple of weeks before she's in any condition to go on missions. Oh, began Harley. Jiraiya-san told me something interesting about Hinata-chan. What's that? Asked Joker, noticing Naruto's embarrassed look. He said, and I quote, "The Hyuga princess is almost a bigger pervert than I am." MOOM. Both parents laughed at their son's discomfort for a bit. Still smiling, Harley decided to ask a question. So, when do I expect psychotic grandbabies? Damn it, Mom. Shino laughed mentally as his father, the clan head, Aburame-shivi, checked all of his son's Kikaichu insects. The elder Aburame was getting stressed out as he discovered that the Kikaichu in his son were a new, venomous species that injected their host with various poisons on a routine basis. What he didn't know was that such behavior was the result of a command from Shino. The boy had spent enough time in the presence of the Uzumaki clan, that he developed a weak version of their bloodline, and so he had sent his Kikaichu to gather toxins to inject himself with to strengthen it. Son, began Shivi, completely monotone. Your Kikaichu seem to have mutated dash. At my direction, father. Shivi silently analyzed the situation and the information he had. Why? Did you know that the Uzumaki Kekai Genkai is transferable through non-invasive means? The elder Aburame's brow twitched, which was the bug user's equivalent to Sakura screaming what? At the top of her lungs. One just has to spend an extremely long period of time in their company, in the neighborhood of 9,001 hours. Shivi nodded. It would allow the two clans to have a stronger alliance in future generations while strengthening the members of both clans. What about your Jounin-sensei and other teammate? Kurenye-sensei actually doesn't spend enough time with us, and she tends to detox herself regularly, it seems. Shivi nodded, signaling to Shino that he should continue. Hinata-san is developing it much more slowly, due to the fact that she's spent less time among Naruto's company. She has only been to the Uzumaki estate once that I know of. Shivi also saw the political opportunity there. You will protect her from discovery until she is strong enough in the bloodline for it to be irreversible. Shino chuckled at that, startling his father with the amount of emotion he was showing. The day Hinata was released from the hospital was the day Naruto finally got the Rasengan. Now, it wasn't fully mastered, even in its incomplete form, but he could keep it together for all of 5 seconds before the sphere of chakra fell apart. Jiraiya declared him finished and congratulated him, just to distract him long enough for the tackling hug that the Hyuga heiress sprang on him to hit. The hug quickly devolved into a playful wrestling match, as both kids were excited for each other and for themselves. The next day, because Hinata was a little worried that she might be getting left behind, a training regimen was set up with Kurenai, to help her chakra reserves, Joker, and Harley, to help with her unconventional tactics, and secretly to help with her development of the Uzumaki bloodline, and Hyuga Shishao, for more Medicnin training. The more intensive parts of her training would happen after the Chunin exams were finally over, as all of her teachers had to help with making sure the finals went without a hitch, especially since Joker was the proctor and Harley was the announcer for the finals. Naruto spent the remaining days visiting the various members of the Gotham Rogues that were now ninja of the Leaf. He found Domin to be rather friendly, though far too sane to want to spend much time with. Ivy was nice, but she sometimes wasn't very patient. Gimonfa was kind of fun to be around, though he didn't quite have the grasp on chakra yet, and gave far too many confusing riddles to the blonde. Croc was fun to be around, but the guy was a workaholic, which helped Guy take his mind off of Lee's injuries for most of the day. Ozuri didn't actually like any of the Uzumakis, he only came to Konoha because he was offered unlimited research without much in the way of restraint, so Naruto wasn't really welcome unless he was going to help torture the prisoners. And the day finally came. 8 Chunin hopefuls stood in the center of the arena, with Joker standing at their head. The roar of the crowd was enormous, and many foreign ninja had shown up for the spectacle of the thing. The Hokage, Kaze Kage, and some woman who was the self-proclaimed Otokage were sitting up in the Kage box, where the village leaders got to watch the proceedings. Each Kage had a brace of umbu from their respective villages guarding them, a pair of snake masks for the Otokage, a hawk mask and an elephant mask for the Kaze Kage, and a rat mask and tiger mask for the Hokage. Otokage Hime, began Sarutobi Hiruzen. I am surprised that you showed up today. None of your village's contestants made it to the finals, especially since the one that did was found dead. She laughed softly. It was a disturbing sound that slightly unnerved the Kaze Kage, but the Hokage was unaffected. He spoke to Uzumaki Joker on a regular basis. I still wanted to see how the exams would turn out, especially since all of Kaze Kagedano's children are participating. Really? Asked the Yondaime Kaze Kage. I was under the assumption that you wished to see the last Uchiha fight, firsthand. The Hokage laughed. I'm sure you'll see more interesting things happen with some of the other Leaf Genin. The Uzumaki child, in particular. Oh? Asked the Otokage. What makes you say that, Hokage Dano? You should know already, Kaze Kagedano. At this, the Kaze Kage cocked his head. Uzumaki Naruto-kun is much like your youngest son, in more ways than one. The Kaze Kage nearly gaped at the Hokage at that. Huh, began the Otokage. The Uchiha is missing. How about we move his match to the end? Many feudal lords are here to witness him specifically, so we may as well allow it, or else our villages may not get as much business. The Hokage sighed. Very well. So, Joker began. Since there are only 9 participants, and the one that's still missing will likely be late, the chicken, this is the new order of the matches. He directed their attention to a large board on one side of the stadium. Match 1, Hyuga Neji vs. Uzumaki Naruto. Match 2, Sabaku no Tamari vs. Aburame Shino. Match 3, Sabaku no Kankuro vs. Nara Shikamaru. Match 4, Uchiha Sasuke vs. Sabaku no Gara. By means of random lot, Akimichi Chuji will fight one of the winners. All of you who are not fighting right now had better scram. Harley's voice could be heard over the loudspeakers. Welcome, one and all, to the Chunin exam finals. My name is Uzumaki Harley. In other words, good morning Konohagaku or no Sato. We bid welcome to the various foreign dignitaries, particularly the Kaze Kage and the self-proclaimed Otokage. There was some cheering at this. And it's just about time to start the first match too. It is between my son, Uzumaki Naruto, and a prodigy of the Hyuga clan, Neji. All we are waiting for now is for my husband, one Uzumaki Joker, to get this show on the road. As the cheering continued, Joker just smiled. He made no move to start the match. Soon, the enthusiasm began to die down. Honey! Get moving! Joker laughed. Always fun to rile her up. Okay, maggots, on my mark, start killing each other. Naruto crouched low while Neji got into the Jukin's standard opening stance. Mark. Naruto leapt straight up to dodge Neji's forward charge, 7 meters into the air. While he did this he began a familiar seal sequence, horse and monkey. Neji had to dodge as Naruto's hand swiped at where his head used to be, but some of the hairs on his head weren't so lucky. They melted away at the point where Naruto touched them. Neji continued to spin away, getting out of Naruto's reach as the blonde kicked and punched at him with all the grace of a drunken bull. Neji, perhaps to prove that finesse beats power, tried to weasel around Naruto's guard faster than the blonde should be able to react. But, Naruto was not there, as he was suddenly backpedaling to gain more distance. Neji didn't understand how the other boy could change direction so quickly, but he didn't ponder on it. Instead, he pressed his attack, forcing the clown child on the defensive and not allowing him to utilize his acidic chakra, and soon enough, the jutsu petered out and fizzled. And then, the unthinkable happened, the arena suddenly had a mass of black-clad blondes appear all around Neji. The Hyuga was astonished by the amount of chakra poured into the field around him and the amount of control it must have taken to create that many solid clones in the positions they were in. Still, he managed to keep up the original and struck the other boy in the shoulder, only to have it pop as it was dispelled. Naruto must have used Kawarami to switch with a random clone. Neji turned, anticipating an onslaught from the other clones, but he began to cough. The smoke from the clone was much too sweet-smelling to have been normal. Neji was a bit sleepy, but he dove away from the gas cloud before he could inhale any more of the poison. It was at this point that the closest clones began kicking at him while many of the other clones were hurling shuriken at him. Seeing no other alternative, Neji dove further forward, rolled to a standing position, and initiated the Kaiten, heavenly spin. A dome of chakra erupted with him at its center, spinning like a top. All of the clones and projectiles in range were annihilated instantly. Once he stopped spinning, one of the remaining clones threw another at him with incredible velocity, forcing him to sidestep to dodge. But the flying Naruto managed to tap Neji on the upper left arm. The prodigy's world became pain for a short period of time. His arm hung limply at his side, and the chakra pathways had been jumbled. They actually spelled something. Eat at Joe's they read. Neji glared at the clone that had sped past him, as all the other clones were gone, so this undoubtedly was the real one. Meanwhile, all the Hyuga in the audience were shocked to see the Uzumaki brat using a bastardization of their taijutsu style. He must have learned it when the heiress used it on him in their spars. Wary of getting close to me now, guessed Naruto. Neji merely glared. Don't worry, I don't think we'll be going steady for a while, if ever. The Hyuga's glare became more menacing. Laughing, Naruto suddenly shot his hands towards Neji, using the Senai Tajishu, hidden shadow many snakes hand, to shoot 6 snakes towards the other boy. Due to the angles at which the snakes had come out of the blonde's sleeves, the Hyuga had to dodge to his left. But the snake closest to his right arm exploded in a mass of chakra, destroying the other snakes and striking his good arm. The same sensation of his coils being rearranged came over him briefly. Both of his arms were now useless, and one of them now spelled out, "This space for rent." So, began Naruto, still chuckling. Do you think you're destined to win now? I can still beat you, even with just my legs. You are destined to lose, and I will prove it. But, before Neji could act on his words, Naruto's hands began twitching. Suddenly, Neji's arms began to flail about, unbalancing the older boy. As he stumbled, he kicked a rock at the blonde. Surprised by the sudden projectile, Naruto couldn't move before it hit him in the head, and he popped like a balloon, leaving more sickly-looking smoke behind. Neji did a quick check, but wasn't fast enough as Naruto melted out of the ground right next to him. Apparently, the boy had been there the entire match, and juked both of Neji's hips, further throwing him off balance. The older boy finally fell over as Naruto pulled himself out of the ground. "You guys have difficulty looking into the soil?" asked Naruto, sounding disappointed and curious. Hinata-chan never seemed to have that blind spot. The spectator Hyuga, especially Hayashi, pondered the possibility that Hinata's eyes might be strong in ways different from the norm. What it actually was, her Byakugan was interacting with the weak Uzumaki Kekai Genkai she was developing, and the two bloodlines were having unexpected effects on each other. Neji was furious, especially since the coils in his legs spelled out, "Property of the Flaming Dog." Naruto grinned and popped his knuckles by interlacing his fingers together and stretching his arms above his head. "Now," he began, lowering his hands as if he were going to play the piano. "Time for some art." Naruto's right index finger twitched, and so did Neji's right arm. Naruto's left ring and Neji's left leg. Naruto then began moving his hands much more quickly, forcing Neji to stand. "You will pay for what you did to Hinata-chan," stated the blonde as if he were discussing what lunch would be. He then began to sing, twitching his fingers to make Neji dance. "Neg, Neji of the Hyuga, look out for that tree. Look out for that dash." Bam! Neji's forced dance routine took him towards some of the sparse vegetation on the arena floor. He found his entire body making a Neji-shaped impression in the bark prior to falling backwards. Wow! The crowd collectively winced, sympathetic to the pain the Hyuga prodigy must have been feeling. "Tree," finished the blonde, putting his hands into his pockets, grinning like the proverbial cat who ate the canary. Joker, Harley, and much of the crowd found the humiliating defeat of Neji hilarious. Naruto simply walked up to his dazed and incapacitated opponent. "Hey, Neji team. Did you win?" "Shut up." Chapter 14, Thinkers. And that's the match. Joker has declared our son to be the winner. Many people cheered. Some made booing noises. Naruto simply pirouetted and grinned back at the crowds. Interestingly enough, Hyuga Hayashi clapped slowly for a time, before getting up to visit his nephew who was now being carted to the medical ward adjacent to the arena. "Forgive my asking, Hokage Dano, but why did you have the Uzumaki boy's parents as officiators?" I second Otokage Hime's question. The Hokage chuckled slightly. "They're the only ones who can keep the boy under some semblance of control. Especially if he ever went berserk." The Kazekage paled at the prospect. He was not a stupid man. The Kyuubi was defeated 12 years ago, and here's this 12-year-old boy whom the Hokage hinted was like Gaara? Knowing what Gaara was like when he lost control, he didn't want to think of how bad the young Uzumaki would be. The Otokage briefly shivered, the only part of her mask of confusion that was imperfect. "All right, son, that's enough," stated Joker, stopping Naruto from basking in the attention, both good and bad, from the audience. He then turned to the box for the participants and began shouting names. "Sabaku no Tamari. Aburame Shino. Get your rears in gear." Tamari leapt off the balcony and used her fan to glide to the arena floor. Shino chose a more direct approach. He stood up on the handrail and simply stepped off. As he collapsed bonelessly, several members of the audience screamed in fear, including Kurenai. But the boy simply stood up and dusted himself off, like nothing had happened. One could hear Naruto laughing through the stunned silence on his way up the vertical wall to the balcony. A common thought amongst the civilian population was, have these kids never heard of stairs? Well, it seems Shino knows how to fall with style. But I wonder how it would measure up to his opponent's form of descent. The audience chuckled nervously at that. As Shino walked at a pedestrian pace towards the center of the field, coming to a stop opposite the blonde from Suna, Tamari taunted him. "Well, tried to. Do you think that your stunt made you look good in the eyes of the dignitaries? You probably just lost your village a lot of money being so reckless." You talk too much, droned Shino emotionlessly, to which Joker chuckled. Alright, time's a wastin'. Begin. Declared the clown. As Tamari backflipped to gain some distance, she swung her fan to try and force Shino to move away, or injure him at the very least. Instead, he leapt forward and stuck himself to the ground with his chakra, allowing the worst of her wind attack to pass right over him, merely ruffling his hair. He began to crawl forward and then, pushing himself upward, broke into a dead sprint, surprising the older girl with his recklessness. Still, she quickly folded her fan and swung it like a bludgeon, clipping Shino in the temple and sending him tumbling. While she was committed to the follow-through on her swing, she noticed a fist-size mass of glowing insects that the brunette boy had left behind. She had no time to block, so she instead used her wind-natured chakra to push her body backwards. Though she managed to get away from the worst of the explosion, the rather impressive fireball that the insects left behind still managed to knock her off balance and singe some of her clothing, sending her tumbling. Shino merely stood up and popped his neck before dusting himself off. He wasn't even bleeding, just scuffed. Croc and Guy chuckled together. When the boy had come to them 15 days prior to the tournament and asked for pain tolerance training, they just had to oblige the young Aburame. Certainly, the boy didn't have iron-like bones yet, but most pain just simply didn't bother him anymore. At the most, he was slightly concussed from the blow to the head. Clever reckless punk, muttered Tamari as she picked herself up. She at least was able to keep a hold of her fan, but that was a small consolation. She opened it and watched Shino staring impassively at her, waiting for her to get up and make the next move. Her eyes narrowed as she studied him. She thought that the Aburame were cold, clinical, and logical, but there was apparently an oddball that her father's spies had missed. Evidently, Shino went nuts in battle, but was perfectly calm at all other times. She swung her fan again, trying to hit the Aburame air with a long-ranged attack. Just as the fan passed the midway point of its arc, Shino was suddenly next to her on her blind side, punching her in the kidney. She managed to focus chakra there to lessen the blow and begin repair, but it still hurt like hell. Deciding to throw caution to the wind, she swung again, throwing herself backwards and barreling through Shino, knocking the younger boy over. She leapt atop her fan again, using wind chakra to assist in her glide, getting to the opposite side of the arena as the boy. As she got into a ready stance, she heard a faint buzzing to her left. She turned just in time for Shino to give her a boot to the head, nailing her in the center of the forehead, sending her tumbling again. As she sat up, shaking off the concussion, she realized the other boy's game. He was spreading small clusters of his bugs around the arena and using kawarimi with them whenever a bug got close. The amount of control necessary to make the switch with such a size difference. Anyway, her first attack had helped him spread some of his bugs around, and his charge was just a means of getting a single bug on her fan, which then hovered near her until she attacked again, allowing an opening. "I've figured you out," stated Tamari as she stood. "Really?" deadpanned Shino. "Yeah, you kawarimi with your little pests." Surprising tactic for an Aburame. Shino leaned forward far enough that she could see his smirk over the top of his collar. "Look down." She did only to find that there were bugs hidden in the blades of grass she stood on, and they were glowing. They made a huge circle around her. This was where he had first thrown himself to the ground, she realized. And he expertly shepherded me back towards this spot. "All it takes is a simple command for them to detonate now," Shino said, rolling his shoulders. "But I figured I should give you the chance to give up, seeing as how you are the Kazekage's daughter." She swallowed as she realized her predicament. On the one hand, he was hesitant to kill her as that might spark bad political relations between their villages. But on the other hand, he was vicious, as exemplified by his preliminary match, and probably wouldn't hesitate any further to kill her if she didn't give up immediately. "I forfeit." "Smart girl," was Joker's response as the glowing of the insects faded. "Winner, Aburame Shino." "You must be glad that one of your own kin wasn't killed," jibed the Hokage. The Kazekage's fists clenched the arms of his chair almost imperceptibly. "Of course I am glad. She is my daughter, after all." Elsewhere, various Jonin gave mutters of approval on Tamari's ability to keep a cool head throughout the one-sided match. They also approved of Shino's tactics, though the first bit was rather reckless. Still, it was very unconventional. They compared it to the match between Naruto and Neji, another one-sided match, though it wasn't apparent that it was so until the second half. Clearly, the influence of the young Uzumaki had changed Shino. Though, they had not seen enough of Naruto's performance to give him a promotion. Shino's insects swarmed back to him as he walked back to the balcony, surprising many among the audience by how many were out on the field. Frowning, Temari followed after him. And what a fight! Shino's expert use of his Kikaichu insects and only 2 jutsu allowed him to dominate the match. For those keeping track, the 2 jutsu employed, in order, were his Hotaru no Baku, a self-designed explosive attack, and Kawarimi, one of the most basic jutsu in any ninja's arsenal. Letting the crowd digest that, particularly the wealthy prospective clients, Harley paused in her announcing. And now begins match 3. Another of the Kaze Kage's children, Sabaku no Kankuro, and the resident shogi champion, Nara Shikamaru, are the players this time. Will the rookie genin beat the arguably more experienced puppeteer, or will the Suna prince avenge his sister? Kankuro's eye twitched. And he had planned on giving up in order to hide his weapons mechanisms and poisons. Oh well. Not like he had to go all out, but he wasn't going to underestimate the other boy either. Deciding he was honor-bound to fight, Kankuro walked down the side of the building. Shikamaru was going to give up on principle, but the decision was taken out of his hands by Naruto. And, surprisingly, Shino. Kankuro was startled when Shikamaru's body fell past him, and even more so when the other boy rolled with his landing. Though the younger genin did look a little dazed. Muttering something that sounded suspiciously like, "Troublesome psychos throwing me like a sack of potatoes," Shikamaru stood up and lazily ambled over to where Joker stood, making sure to place himself as far west as possible, putting the dark-haired boy closer to the larger shadows in the arena. Kankuro knew that the lazier boy had chosen the terrain carefully, though he wasn't sure why the more sparsely vegetated side of the field would be considered more advantageous. It possibly had something to do with the longer shadows over there. When Kankuro and Shikamaru were both in starting positions, Joker began to talk. "You two had better make this as interesting as the other matches have been. Begin, slackers." The kabuki enthusiast reached behind him to grasp the wrappings around his puppet, only to have a kunai impact the center of his face, giving off a wooden sound. Everyone turned to see Shikamaru backpedaling towards the shadows behind him. The crowd looked back to see sand crumbling off of Kankuro, revealing a puppet underneath, which those who knew the boy knew that it was named Karasu. The wrappings opened up to reveal the real puppeteer. Annoyed, Kankuro pulled the kunai out of Karasu's face and glared disdainfully at Shikamaru, who merely shrugged. The face-painted boy threw the kunai back at Shikamaru, who in turn deftly caught it with his hand by the pommel ring. "Ever play Mumblipeg?" asked the Nara of Kankuro. "What?" "It's a game of psychology." "I know what it is." Shikamaru smirked, and then darted behind cover. Karasu followed, but a small shadow darted out from behind a different tree towards Kankuro. Seeing this, Kankuro had to backpedal until he was 2 meters out of the range of Shikamaru's shadow. Unfortunately, he had to pull Karasu back as well, considering that he couldn't project his chakra strings that far yet. Grunting with frustration, he had Karasu open its mouth, revealing a kunai launcher within. Taking careful aim, he had it shoot the kunai at the tree Shikamaru had first hidden behind, assuming that the other boy was trying to trick him by having it appear to come from a different tree. Wrapped around the handle of the kunai was several explosive tags, which detonated when the small knife hit the bark. Just before, however, the shadow that had been questing for him disappeared and Shikamaru dodged behind another tree. The top half of the assaulted tree fell backwards into the wall, splintering as the branches hit the concrete. "Plenty more where that came from," yelled Kankuro as he aimed again. Another explosion in another felled tree, and Shikamaru dodged in the same direction again. Kankuro smirked at his foolishness and continued to herd the younger boy out of the shadow. "Hey, muscles?" asked Naruto. "What's up?" answered Chuji around a handful of potato chips. "Isn't Shikamaru faster than that? I thought he had gotten pretty fast when I played Mumblipeg next to him in class." "Oh, he is fast. That's a bunchin'." "Thought so." Once there were only 3 trees to hide behind, Kankuro laughed. He still had 8 explosive kunai left in Karasu. He took careful aim again, and found himself moving against his will. Unable to turn his head, he glanced down with his eyes and saw a shadow attached to Karasu's, and going behind Karasu at an angle back to a random tree that had not been blown up yet. Kagemon success! Declared Shikamaru loudly. The boy then walked out from behind the tree, Kankuro following his every movement. Lazily, the Nara walked forward, causing Kankuro to leave Karasu behind. When Shikamaru got close to the puppet, it fell down, the chakra strings stretched too far to keep the construct standing. Shikamaru kept walking until Kankuro was mere centimeters from the wall, and then he leaned back, standing on the small pile of sand that had originally concealed Karasu. Say good night, taunted the lazy genin. Good night, responded Kankuro, smirking at the wall. The sand under Shikamaru's feet exploded, a hidden explosive tag going off, remotely and seamlessly triggered by the Kabuki enthusiast, breaking the Nara's jutsu. Shikamaru had a rough and tumble landing. When he managed to sit up, he saw one of Karasu's blades within a millimeter of his eye. You lose, Kankuro declared. Shikamaru smiled nervously. What? No blood? Wondered Joker. Oh well. Winner, Sabaku no Kankuro. The crowd cheered, especially due to how exciting the fight was, but they were cheering for both fighters. How exciting was that? First, the puppeteer dominated the fight, then we had a tense turnaround, and then the Konohinin was surprised at the last moment. Both fought well and thought ahead. Kankuro surprised his father and sister by helping Shikamaru to his feet. Good fight, murmured the hooded genin. I think you may be as smart as my sister, if not smarter. That exploding tag at the end really surprised me, muttered Shikamaru. Yeah, I tend to leave a bunch of those around. As the two boys returned to the balcony, Hatake Kakashi and Uchiha Sasuke appeared near Joker. You're late, Kakashi, growled the clown in a tone that allowed for none of his excuses, before turning to Sasuke. Your dance partner looks murderous, you almost stood him up. The raven-haired boy openly glared at Joker, particularly for the gay joke, but the clown ignored him in favor of calling Gaara down to the arena floor. The young Jinchuriki smirked before shushing to stand across from Sasuke. And here is the fight awaited for by the rich clientele. The son of the Kazekage versus the last Uchiha. When I decide to stop the match, began Joker. Well, you had better stop. Anyway, go. Sasuke had to immediately dodge a torrent of sand, throwing a brace of shuriken at Gaara as he did so. The sand created a Tsunabunshi, sand clone, to catch and return the weapons before the clone dissolved. Sasuke, Sharingan spinning, easily dodged the pointy metal projectiles and switched to a familiar stance. Naruto snorted. What? Asked Chuji. The Guken may be effective against Gaara's sand, explained Shino. But your body has to be hardened to the stresses put upon it by practicing the style. Shino shook his head. There is no way Sasuke's body is up to it, even if he trained in it for the whole month. Still, remarked Naruto. Makes one wonder if Kakashi copied it from Lee so that Sasuke could copy it from him. That makes him even worse off, stated Shino. It means he didn't actually learn it and is following a set pattern. Definitely looks like it, Chuji observed. Those seem to be the exact same attacks Lee did in the beginning of his match with Gaara. When Gaara shielded himself in a spherical mass of sand, Sasuke decided to try and pierce it. He gathered a great deal of chakra and charged his hand with electricity. Chidori. 1,000 birds. The young Uchiha rushed forward, intent on killing Gaara with one hit. He charged forward and pierced the shell, and nothing happened at first. Then the sand caught up and wrapped around Sasuke. Pathetic, deadpanned Gaara, rising from a whirlpool of sand not too far away. Verify my existence. Hold it. Growled Joker in Gaara's ear, startling the redhead. Normally, I'm all for slaughtering haughty copycats, but today I'm feeling particularly benevolent. So, release him. Gaara, recomposed, glared at Joker. I'll kill you too. I'd love to see you try, laughed the clown. When the sand began to rise up around the acid burn victim, Gaara suddenly found himself looking up at the sky, his jaw throbbing as he lay on his back, the gourd having landed nearby. The sand encasing Sasuke fell apart due to a lack of concentration on it. The Uchiha quickly scrambled out of the silica particles as Joker called the match. Both the Otokage and the Kazekage stared at the arena floor, dumbfounded that a simple jonin from Konoha, whose specializations happened to be chemistry and interrogation, managed to knock Gaara down. Now you know why I had him be the proctor. Winner, Sabuka no Gaara. And you, he said, addressing Sasuke. Get to the medics or something. In a rare show of charity, my husband forced the Sand Prince to release our darling last Uchiha. The amount of sarcasm on the word darling was practically tangible. Still, with Gaara winning match 4, that leaves us with deciding who Akimichi Chuji will fight. I'll stick my hand in this box, which has 4 numbered balls within. Whichever number comes out indicates the match number of the person who he must fight. Don't wanna fight Gaara, muttered the large genin. You have a 1 in 4 chance, replied Shino. And 50-50 to fight a Konohanin, remarked Naruto. Relax. My dad can handle ol' Sandy Toes if he gets out of line. 1. Akimichi Chuji must fight Uzumaki Naruto. Banzai! Screamed the crazy blonde happily as he leapt the railing of the balcony. Chuji opted for the stairs instead of getting to the arena floor in a non-traditional manner. Joker mimed as if to catch his son, but suddenly put his arms behind his back, grinning as Naruto landed on his face at the older clown's feet. There were some laughs from the audience at that. That's it for part 3. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.